All right, so we are back on the Weight Concept presented by The Ring, and today they're actually going to do this, aren't they? They really are going to make Jake Paul versus Anthony Joshua. And it's not just me saying this as if I want this to happen, because I'm truly, concerned that Jake Paul is going to get his actual head knocked off his shoulders. And I know many people in this comment section will be like, why is that a concern, Wade? That's what we want. Well, I think it's probably a bad precedent, but boxing has already set a ton of bad precedents. So it may not just be an idea. It may be reality, and it may be sooner than you think. What do I mean? The breakdown. Let's go.
He is the star of W.A.D.E Concept.
All right, so Nikisa Badarian, Jake Paul's manager and the co-founder of MVP, was on Sky Sports in the UK today to talk about a myriad of things. But the main thing I wanted to cover today is obviously the Jake Paul, Anthony Joshua rumors and now potentially talks going on for an actual fight. There's a difference between Jake Paul saying, I want to fight Anthony Joshua, and the rest of us kind of being like, yeah, all right, bud. Although I will say, I know Jake's delusional. So I know that when he says it, he actually will fight it. And I think this is the first time in Jake's boxing career that his delusion will lead him to a place that's going to get him seriously injured. Honestly, this is what I think. I don't understand why they want to take this fight. Hopefully Nikisa can try to convince me as to any reason outside of that sweet, sweet dinero, a.k.a. money, a.k.a. dollar bills, y'all. To me, there is no feasible answer for this, and I think it's really going to get Jake hurt. And again, I know a lot of people will celebrate that, but I just don't understand it. So let's take a look at what Nikisa had to say.
I think the fight can absolutely happen. I'm looking at it as Jake versus Joshua, which is quite biblical and it's quite impactful in many ways.
All right, so first off, Nikisa says he looks at this as Jake versus Joshua, and, it has biblical undertones. I don't know the biblical undertones of Jake versus Joshua. I know Jacob is essentially Israel, I'm pretty sure, in the Bible, or it has something to do with, the seed of Abraham. I'm not going to act like I'm a biblical historian, but I'm pretty sure I remember from Sunday school growing up that Jacob is the name given to, I guess, what would become Israel. And then Joshua is like an assistant of Moses, who leads the Israelites at a certain point through Canaan. I think, I could be wrong. Bible knowers, let me know down below, but I'm not sure if there was ever a Jacob versus Joshua thing in the Bible. I know they both had significance, but I'm not sure the connection there. But then again, this could just be Nikisa saying Jake is A side versus Anthony Joshua, and I don't really know what to make of that. It would be a massive fight. If we're talking about who's a bigger star in boxing, if they do it in the UK, it's going to be Anthony Joshua. He is a draw there, almost no boxer is here in America. I think he's sold out 90,000 a couple times out there. I don't know, but anyway, we keep going.
Look at Anthony Joshua. I think he is 28-4, if I'm not mistaken, and 2 of his losses are against Alexander Usyk. Usyk weighed in at 220 pounds for those fights. Jake is not Usyk. A lot more years of experience needed to get to that level. But Jake walks around between 208 and 210, and he fought Mike Tyson at 228 pounds. So I think size-wise, we can get comfortable with it. And I think experience-wise, Jake is learning very fast and growing, and Joshua is a little long in the tooth. So
listen, I'm all for selling it for your guy, but the reach is here to make any comparison between Jake Paul and opponents that Anthony Joshua has had and also opponents Jake has had. This is like Nikisa has grown go-go gadget arms, and he is stretching to make these reaches. And again, it's what he's supposed to do. I get it, right? If his client says, listen, I want to fight Anthony Joshua, and Nikisa says, that's probably not a good idea, and his client says, no, I want to fight Anthony Joshua, you're not hearing me, make it happen, then there's really nothing Nikisa can do other than this. Do I think that he believes Jake can win? I don't know. I don't think any sane person believes Jake can win this fight. If you have any frontal cortex brain matter, you probably think Jake has less than 1% chance of winning this fight. But at the same time, Nikisa's doing what he's supposed to do. Now, as far as what he's saying, Jake weighed in at 228 to fight Mike Tyson. Usyk weighed around 220s to fight Anthony Joshua. He said Jake is clearly not Usyk, but he's getting experience, and Joshua's a little long in the tooth. Number one, Alexander Usyk's one of the greatest boxers we've ever seen. Cruiserweight, heavyweight, 220 is a little bit more natural for him at his age to stay at heavyweight, which is why he's there. But also, his ability to box allows him, as an undersized heavyweight in this era, Alexander Usyk in the 70s and the 80s is not an undersized heavyweight. George Foreman in the 70s was 220-something pounds. You know what I'm saying? Muhammad Ali was 216. So in those days, Usyk's not undersized. But in the era of the bigger heavyweight, the 250-pound Anthony Joshua, the 240-pound Daniel Dubois, the 290-pound, almost 300-pound Tyson Fury. This era of heavyweight is bigger. And Usyk, even with those bigger guys, is able to still hurt them because of his boxing ability, his speed, elusiveness, his footwork, all the things that Jake just doesn't have, at least not anywhere close to the level of being competitive with one of the more athletic heavyweights. While no, he doesn't have the greatest feet, but he has well enough feet to hang with Jake Paul in a boxing ring. We're talking about Anthony Joshua here. We're not talking about random heavyweight Jake has sparred in camp to get ready for 58-year-old Mike Tyson. And I just have to say this stuff because it's, if the comparisons are going to be made, I have to point at the holes in the argument because I don't even make them. They're just there, which is that, Jake was 228 pounds for the Mike Tyson fight, but it was a 2-minute per round fight and they went 8 rounds. I know that wasn't because of Jake, but at the same time, he shouldn't be at 228 pounds. It's not great for his body. Not that he can't hold the weight, but if he's going to try to go long rounds against a power punching, way younger, fast, explosive heavyweight, you want to call Anthony Joshua long in the tooth. Jake was trying to hurt Mike Tyson, at least early on in that fight, and he couldn't do it. And that's 58-year-old Mike. And I'm not saying that at a certain point Jake didn't let off the gas or whatever, but I watched him in those first couple of rounds, and he was throwing haymakers. He was throwing kill shots at Mike Tyson, and he couldn't hurt him. I'm not saying Jake can't knock people out or whatever. He doesn't have power. I think Jake does have some power, but this is heavyweight we're talking about. And it's just, we just watched him fight against Julio Cesar Chavez Jr., and Chavez was protecting himself, clearly did not want to fight. Clearly, apparently was using it as a way to just avoid ICE agents for a couple more days instead of turning himself in. But the point I'm making is Jake can intimidate a guy like Chavez Jr. with his size, with his speed, with his power, and make him go, hey, you know what? Maybe I don't want to fight this kid and take any risk. Anthony Joshua is used to fighting the bigger level of heavyweights and has fought the most skilled heavyweight there is. And in the second fight, looked a little better than some other guys have against Usyk. Nikisa has to say what he has to say to make this plausible to even talk about doing, let alone starting to actually build toward the fight. But it's just, I don't see it.
Could be a very interesting matchup, and we're actively discussing it with Matchroom.
In terms of those active discussions, how far have things progressed? Is it something that you can see happening next for Jake and for AJ?
I think we're looking at it happening in Q1 of 2026 is kind of the current discussion. I think it's public that AJ was taking a little time away. I think he had a little surgery. So once he's ready and once Jake is ready, we're going to squarely focus on that.
This is what I'm talking about, dude. Like, this has gone past the point of, well, we may want it to happen. We even had Turki Al-Sheikh saying, listen, I'll make the fight. I'll put the fight on because Turkey is so invested in it. He's so sure that Anthony Joshua is going to beat Jake. He called it a 99% to 1% fight because he likes to put on 50-50 fights, right? Fights that people want to see, fights that make the most sense and are the most competitive. He's not even trying to hide the fact that he thinks this is a 99-1 and he wants it to happen, so he's done with the Jake Paul problem. That's what he said. I respect the honesty. And if you're looking for AJ to have a build-up fight, which is what everybody's saying, a fight to kind of get him back on the horse before potentially, finally, hopefully going into the Tyson Fury fight, would you rather him fight Tony Yoka or would you rather him fight an almost guaranteed win in Jake Paul? I mean, again, it boggles my mind that this can even happen.
How much of a worry is that? We saw what he did to Ngannou.
So power is obviously the last thing to go. So obviously AJ has a ton of power and he's still fairly young. Mike Tyson, much more vicious of a knockout artist than Anthony Joshua, much older than AJ, but that was a risk that Jake was willing to take.
No, we just can't do these kind of comparisons. You just can't. Mike was 58 years old, and yes, what Nikisa's saying is true when you add context, which is in his prime or even fairly in the back end of his prime and out of his prime, like in the part of his life where he was completely gone from boxing and gone to prison, come back, strung out, out of shape. Mike, even then, was probably a naturally harder, vicious knockout puncher than AJ has continued to be. But that's not even what Mike is now. We're talking 25 years after that. 25 years after the worst parts of Mike Tyson as a professional. AJ's not even as washed as Mike was at the end of his career. Like, Mike was washed at the end of his actual pro boxing run. Didn't mean he wasn't powerful, but the comparison being made is like Mike Tyson was anywhere near the threat that we're talking about here. It wasn't even close. Like, yeah, Mike had a shot of hurting Jake, and it was looked at as somewhat competitive because of Mike's age. We don't look at this fight as competitive because AJ is a bad motherfucker when his mind is in a boxing match. Now, if he shows up like he showed up against Daniel Dubois, or shows up like he showed up against Andy Ruiz the second fight, even though he won the fight, it was the most hesitant, just get through it type of fight. If he shows up like that, or, I don't know, like the Usyk 1 fight, then yeah, we may have a real issue here. Like, if AJ's not focused and he's just doing it whatever and off in La La Land, then yeah, they may have a problem, because AJ, when he's not locked in, just forgoes all boxing and just wings it, and bad shit happens to him. But if he shows up with any ounce of respect, any ounce of dignity, any ounce of just, I'm going to prove that I'm a professional and you can't just walk into this sport and call out a high-level heavyweight as someone that's not even a true heavyweight and think you're going to win, then he'll absolutely flatline Jake. So when Akisa is saying stuff like, yeah, Jake knew going in there with Mike was a risk, you're talking like a 95 or 96% increase in risk now versus what you were talking about against Mike Tyson. It's not even close.
Francis Ngannou, amazing MMA fighter, very powerful man, not an experienced boxer, right? A lot less experienced than Jake Paul. So if people were comfortable with Francis getting in there with AJ, Jake, who is now 13 fights in, plus 1 amateur fight, a lot less than AJ, but much more than Francis Ngannou, I think we're very comfortable with it. Ultimately, it's not a fight that I want Jake to do. It's a fight that Jake wants to do. And that's a discussion we've had at length, and he feels very confident about where he is in his career and his chances of upsetting Anthony Joshua.
I mean, listen, that end part is a fair point. Like, Nikisa has to understand the words coming out of his mouth. They're like, listen, I'm trying to do my best to convince you guys of like why Jake thinks he can win this fight, but I'm going to be the first to tell you I didn't want this fight for him. I don't know how to even read that, but I agree with that part, to be like, hey, listen, this is not my choice. In fact, I did not want him fighting Anthony Joshua, but we talked, and I tried to, he's not saying it, but he's like, I tried to tell him this is probably not the best idea. Tried to talk to him, maybe tried to talk him out of it, and Jake's just not budging. But again, the comparisons are what I have to go back to here. You're talking about Francis Ngannou, who, yes, should not have been in a ring with Anthony Joshua as quick as he was. Shouldn't have been in a ring as quick as he was with Tyson Fury either. But the styles make matchups, and like Nikisa said, Francis is a ridiculously strong puncher, a gifted athlete, a freak of nature. Now, yeah, Jake has better skills, and he has more experience, and he has 13 fights, and all of that's great, but the same things that plagued Francis potentially and almost certainly can plague Jake Paul. His inexperience at heavyweight, not just in boxing, but at heavyweight, and having to adjust with a man like AJ, who is powerful and is a bit faster than the other heavyweights outside of Usyk, cracking you with a shot that's set up that he actually uses his jab to create. If AJ, again, shows up in any kind of proper form, and you get that AJ the night he fought Francis, it's going to be a train wreck.
Talk about disrupting the sport and getting those eyeballs on it. Jake versus AJ, or Jake versus Joshua, as you call it, at Wembley perhaps sounds pretty good to us. Would that be the dream venue for a fight like that?
I think we're looking at multiple options. Wembley's definitely a possibility. Jake has said he'd like to do it there. He likes the idea of going in and hearing 90,000 people booing him. He kind of feeds off of that. But we're looking at the U.S. Obviously, Saudi Arabia is also an option. The Middle East is an option as a whole. But we want to do it in the most impactful way possible.
Now, listen, again, this as a spectacle is going to draw ridiculous amounts of viewership. And for the spectacle of it, because that's what we're agreeing to this being as we go into it, everybody knows this will be an event. It'll be a spectacle. It'll be must watch for reasons that probably aren't usually the must watch reasons of boxing, just like Mike Tyson and Jake was. It was a weird kind of circus clash, and that's okay. Again, I'm watching this shit. I'm intrigued by it. I want to see it. And with Turki Al-Sheikh, if he's going to be involved, and I know he said he wants to be, I think the right idea is to do this in the UK. Do it in Anthony Joshua's backyard. Do it at Wembley. Run 90,000, 80,000, whatever it's going to be. That's the story. And it really sucks to me that it's not going to be Jake and KSI at Wembley, because that's really the story. That's the one that honestly should have happened. For those that are not familiar with the crossover or influencer side, that's the fight that's been on the books and off the books and should have happened and could have happened and didn't happen. But regardless, U.S. versus U.K. always sells. And especially when someone as hated as Jake by the UK audience comes into their backyard and they have a guy that they love in Anthony Joshua, it's a recipe made in boxing spectacle heaven, I guess. All right, so that's Nikisa talking about the fight. Now, if that wasn't enough to convince you that this thing is probably going to happen, more likely than not, I'm saying, I mean, if I'm putting percentages on it, unless AJ's team, and I saw Ben Davidson, I don't know if he's still coaching AJ, but I know he was AJ's coach, talking about he didn't want to see AJ do that. He would rather AJ take more credible fights. And that's also a fair point, and one that a lot of people are also going to hang on to and say, yeah, we would rather see him fight Tony Yoka or somebody else at heavyweight, Tyson Fury, I don't know, whoever else. Outside of something like that happening, I'm putting this at like a 70-30 thing. And again, these are just my percentages. The way this conversation's going, the way, if you read in between the lines of what AJ's saying, by the way, what Eddie Hearn is saying about, yeah, we'll sign it. Yeah, let's do it right now. Yeah, they want it. Jake wants it. I don't think Nikisa actually, I don't know if that's something that he wants, but he's going to do right by his client, or at least do what his client's asking him to do. And then you have this, which again just is more ammo, more fuel to the fire for me. This was, I think, on Instagram. I'm assuming this was from the Sky Sports interview. Some random on Instagram commented underneath it and said, imagine losing to Tommy Fury, then thinking you have a chance to upset Joshua, which is a fair point. I mean, Jake fought Tommy Fury at 185 pounds and lost. That was a long time ago. Jake's had a lot of experience since then, XYZ, but you can see why the idea of him beating Joshua is fucking insane to most people with a brain. But Nikisa don't like randoms coming at his boy like that, so he comments underneath it, imagine being 28, buying a home for $40 million, freaking massive flex, pocket watch to the, I don't even know if Jake announced it was a $40 million home, putting on the biggest event in women's boxing history, fighting in the most viewed boxing event since Ali, and then fighting AJ soon after. Oh, actually, don't imagine it, Jake Paul did it. So again, I don't know how many of you guys talk like this when you're just wondering about a fight, when you're just negotiating about a fight, when you're just in talks about a fight, saying things like, imagine you were fighting in the biggest, most viewed boxing event since Ali, then fought AJ soon after. Oh, wait, don't imagine it. Jake Paul did it. This is almost a guarantee. Like, maybe Nikisa's getting ahead of himself a little bit and just adding things in to hit back at a troll, but that seems like almost a freaking done deal. That seems like this is what's going to be happening. So again, I'm not trying to over-exaggerate. I'm not trying to read too much into stuff. I'm literally just reading the words that are in front of me and listening to what's being said. I can't believe it, but they're actually going to do this shit. This is insane. They're going to do this fight. I think it's a bad idea for Jake. I do, and I'm not even trying to like shit on the fight because again, I'm going to watch, but I just think there's a no-win situation outside of money, and sure, it'll be a big event, but if Jake's goals are to be a world champion, which, okay, we'll see. I'm still bearish on that, but if that's the goal, outside of the putting on the big events thing, how do you get to that if you don't get past AJ and he really does a number on you? I have no idea. And again, is the money worth that kind of risk to not only this fight, but the future? I don't think so, but comment section, you tell me if I'm crazy. It seems like it's starting to tilt one way. What was kind of a joke, or at least seemed like that, only a few months ago is now starting to become reality. Again, I said it just like Eddie Hearn did. Someone could get very badly hurt, and I don't think it'll be AJ. But it looks like this fight's going to happen. So you guys let me know what you think. What's the percentage you put on this fight actually happening? And if it does, what happens in it? I don't have those. I mean, I kind of do. I think everybody kind of does. Jake's probably going to get hurt really badly, but we don't know. Not for sure until they finalize this thing or until things actually get set in place. So is Jake going to fight Anthony Joshua? I think so, but I don't have those answers, so I guess we'll find out.